officials and any guests. By my watch, it's 2:30, and I'd like to start the meeting. Shall we start the meeting with a moment for quiet reflection and meditation? Thank you. Once again, welcome to all members. I don't see the minister on the call as yet. I see the HOD, Dr. Kruti, and the Department of Health officials in attendance, Ms. Laura Angaletti de Toy and Mr. Wayne Smith. I see Mr. Wayne Knight is not here, but Mr. Wayne Smith's not here yet. Shall I ask to start by asking the members to introduce themselves? My name is Christopher Fry. I'm the head of I'm the chair of this ad hoc committee. We'll start with member of Andrikus van der Westhuizen.
Good afternoon, Chair. Andrikus van der Westhuizen, member of the committee.
Afternoon, Deirdre Bartman.
Sorry, good afternoon, Chair and members. I'm Cameron Dugmore, member of the ad hoc committee. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Khalil Brankes.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone in the meeting. My name is Kayla Murray, also a member of this ad hoc. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon to the department. Good afternoon to the honourable members and to the staff. I'm Mbulelo Isaac Sleko, member of the ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Peter de Villiers.
Good afternoon, Chair, everybody. Gerrit Pretorius, member of the committee.
I think that is all. Those are the members of the committee. Thank you very much, members. Dr. Kruti, if you could introduce yourself and your team, please.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. My name is Keith Kruti. I'm the head of department, Western Cape Department of Health and Wellness. With me, I've got the first person that will also put on the camera just to show you who he or she is Dr. Laura Angeletti de Toy. She's the Chief Director for Facilities and Infrastructure Management. Thank you, Laura. The next person is Dr. Sadiq Karim. He is the Chief of Operations, the head of all services in the department. Thank you. Then there is Mr. Simon Kay. He's the head of our corporate services. Mr. Kay, there you go. And then there's Dr. Wayne Smith. He's in the disaster management system, but he is a disaster management specialist in our department, Dr. Wayne Smith. There is also members of the ministry, Chairperson. There's Dr. Douglas Newman, and there is Mr. Luke Albert. Yeah, so that's all the officials and the officials in the ministry. Over to you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll put on my camera just to make sure that I'm alive and well and in one piece. Members, if I can ask, and officials, sorry, before I forget, Ms. Kruti, has there been any apologies received?
Good afternoon, Chairperson, through you. No apologies. I'm just informing that Minister Mbombo entered the meeting.
Minister Mbombo, welcome. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Nama French Mbombo, the MEC for Health. Thank you. Sorry
Thank you.
Being late.
No problem, ma'am. And then I see Member Kasim has also joined us. Member Kasim.
Good morning, members. Member Kasim is online as well.
Thank you very much. Just to go through the rules of engagement for these virtual meetings, all members to be muted at the beginning of the meeting to avoid background noises. Members, if you could flag points of order in the chat function, please. All video and audio must be switched off to improve the quality of the connection. If someone is speaking, though, they may put on their mic and video. Participants must switch off their mics once they have finished, and video once they have finished speaking. And all presenters to share their own presentation and to unshare the presentation once the briefing has concluded. Right, Ms. Kruti, is there any other things that I'm missing? And no apologies from your side?
Chairperson, no apologies. I forwarded the presentation to all members, so we are ready to go.
Thank you very much. So now we will have the briefing by the department on the state of readiness in being equipped with sufficient supply of backup generations for hospitals. Dr. Kluti, over to you and your team, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The presentation that Ms. Kluti has sent to all of you is on the screen. Is it visible to everyone? May I proceed?
Yes, it's visible, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. So I will be taking you through 8 broad areas. Firstly, just to explain the impact of load shedding on health services. The second one, which is the key question you posed to us, is what is the backup power, what we call the standby generators. And then some of the measures we are taking in our department, such as measuring energy consumption and reducing that across all our facilities. Then reducing electricity demand specifically. And then also our awareness campaign and our energy huddles. It's all our mechanisms to keep in touch and to solve problems as they arrive. Then there is a new program that we started, very excited about, is starting an inverter program at our rural clinics, and also a renewable energy program that will go to 15 of our hospitals to start off with, and then an electrical supply preparedness plan in the case of the unlikely event of a total blackout. What exactly do we do in the healthcare system? So the first one is how the energy crisis affects the health and wellness service delivery. So on the left-hand side, basic impact, it impairs the capacity to provide health services because many of our medical equipment is dependent on electrical supply. Our computers and digital records is dependent on a predictable electrical supply for retrieval of our records. Our telecommunication system and our call centers. Cold storage is a very important part. I'll come back to cold storage a little bit later. Then safety and security systems, very important aspect. Also our fire alarm systems and then access control systems, which is quite critical in some specifically high risk areas, such as neonatal units and baby delivery units. And then lighting, and then thermal comfort, specifically because we've gone through quite cold winter stretches within the last 2 months. On the right-hand side, this is the status of 10 hospitals being exempted from load shedding up to stage 6. So our current situation is these are 10 of the busiest hospitals. And at the moment, as it stands, any load shedding up to stage 6, they are freed from the load shedding. So in George, in Grootskeer, in Karl Bremer, in Mitchells Plain, Mowbray Maternity, New Somerset, Red Cross, Tygerberg, Victoria Hospital, and Westvliet, they are all exempted up and to and including stage 6. We are currently in discussion with Eskom, and we are for the installation of what would be a dedicated feeder for the Khayelitsha Hospital. Now, Khayelitsha Hospital, just to explain to the members, is so embedded in the grid, it was virtually impossible for Eskom to give us exemption like the other hospitals, because that would be the 11th hospital that we require exemption from. But this dedicated feeder will enable us to do this. So we're getting a final quote next week from Eskom, and if all things go according to plan, we are looking at October, November for having this dedicated feeder in place. But the biggest impact by far has been staff morale and stress levels, and the healthcare system has taken what I would call repeated shocks, repeated stresses over the last 5 to 10 years, none bigger than COVID. Then since then, there was also the drought before that. Since then, it's now load shedding. And very recently, like as far as last week, and we're still taking the cost up until yesterday, is the impact of the taxi violence. So the healthcare system and the staff is under tremendous pressure to just do what it is that they're supposed to do with all of these things coming at them. And the ongoing load shedding has a huge implication on staff morale and stress levels. So how the energy crisis then also affects what we call our infrastructure maintenance. On the left-hand side, we're giving you a comparison of all the things we've done in terms of infrastructure maintenance of what we call emergency repairs. And it is for the financial years from 17-18 all the way to 22-23. And for 23-24, it's the first quarter. So it's April, May, June, and now we got July's figures. You can see 23-24 is the blue line on top. So we have much more maintenance to be done, and we'll show you what it is. So you can see on average before, for all the other years, we ran at 19-20 at about 90 maintenance emergencies. And in 22-23 last year, we had 80 emergencies for the 12 months. 23-24, which is 4 months into this year, already we have more than 120 emergencies. If you go to the right-hand side, you will see that generator and electrical emergencies, what it is year to date. So comparatively, of all the emergencies we've had in 22-23, for instance, out of the 80 last year, less than 20, so about a quarter, was due to electrical and generator failure. This year, if you look at this, we already have had in April, May, and June and July 45 emergencies so far. It's more than double in the 4 months. We've had more than double that we had for an entire 12 months last year. And we'll explain to you why that is. It is that generators has not been designed to be a default provider of electricity. What we've had to do now with this Eskom and the load shedding situation, our generators in many of our hospitals have become the default supply instead of Eskom. And that's why we're running at this. Generators is not designed to run 24 hours a day and to run non-stop in terms of all these interruptions. So what the availability and use of backup power, just to explain to you our full footprint. So our generator availability, this is for essential power supply only, is in place in 193 facilities. So all hospitals are covered. All community health centers are covered. So those are the 24-hour community health centers. The larger community daycare centers, these are all the places where there are doctors, nurses, and pharmacies operating. They run 8 hours, but they have a little bit more than the ordinary clinics. We also have our observatory forensic pathology unit. You can imagine that is a massive operation, and the Tygerberg forensic pathology unit. All of those together is the 193 where we have generator backup power. On the right and the right-hand side, the use of generators. So what is the operational implications for this? And I think this is the key question that this committee asked us to address. Diesel availability and cost. So from the 1st of April to the 30th of June, we spent 12 million rand in diesel alone. We've just got the figures in for July, and I will send you that up, show you that updated figure. And it's now escalated even further just for the month of July as well. So diesel becomes a huge operation to run these generators. Secondly, you now have more frequent breakdowns, as I showed you. Planned maintenance challenges now is also a big thing, because now we can't even do the maintenance as per our schedule and our policy for these generators that's been in our system for a while, because they have to run during load shedding all the time. You have the shortening of the lifespan of generators. That's now before it requires replacement. You now also have longer lead time for repairs due to the limited availability of parts in the country, because we're not the only ones using generators. Now, all of a sudden, the parts in the country is not enough, and we have to wait for parts. The costs of repairs themselves is also escalated. And obviously, our maintenance team priorities is now affected. So our maintenance team priorities, they have a range of things that they must get to. Now, all this additional work of the generators is now almost getting them away from their other priorities and stretch them beyond their capacity. And then limited health service provided. Because we cannot guarantee that the generator So we have a policy, for instance, that if a hospital's electricity is running on a generator, you cannot start a surgical procedure in theatre. So you can imagine every time we're going to load shedding and somebody has to be operated on, we have to wait until we're on to normal power before we can actually, because we can't put people's lives at risk, because if the generator fails, we have no backup. So also this is quite important at the bottom there. The time of running generators that we've now done is equal to driving a truck for 80,000 kilometers in 3 months. In that 3-month period, this is the amount of generator power we've used. A truck driving around for 80,000 kilometers in that time. The use of uninterrupted power supply, which is called UPS, we also do that on top of this for life support medical equipment. You can imagine people on ICU and on ventilators, in operating theaters. So if we do start an operation in normal time and electricity time and go to generator backup, we also have to have UPS in the operating theater to safeguard the person to complete the operation. EMS call centers, can you imagine our call center operation? Sorry. And then also our ICT equipment. But again, on the left-hand side, due to the lack of financial and human resources, we cannot afford to install and operate standby generators in an additional 278 other facilities. Now, they happen to be much smaller, because 168 of them are clinics, and then further 110 are other things such as teaching colleges, EMS stations, and all of those. So we are covering 193, and all the hospitals are covered, all the big busy places are covered, but 278 facilities are not covered by generators. So this is when the lights go out and there's no power, everybody in that facility works in the dark. And that, you can imagine, is also what the impact on the staff in those, although much smaller facilities, the impact is felt like in anywhere else. So just to go into this backup power, so for the generator maintenance support strategy, we now have 2 maintenance contracts in place. The breakdown of generators are logged onto this maintenance portal. So this is an example of the portal. And you can see, so what we've had on this portal, since the starting of the system in June, so we started it in June, we have had 65 breakdowns that's been logged onto the system. And that's commensurate to what I said, how this is escalated into having to service and fix parts in generators that breaks down. So here's an example, Macassar CDC. And that is an example, a critical failure. Now we are waiting spares because it's now logged in our system. It tells you when the generator failed. We found the alternator failed. Then we had to get a lone generator to install it on the 30th of June. And now we're waiting spare parts. And so that is just an example. Now we put that as critical failure red. And on our system, on any daily basis, we can go, and every one of those 193 that I showed you is logged on the system. So you're either red, orange, or green. A Lady Michaelis, for instance, is orange. You can see there the generator failed to start. The installing contractor was called to attend. We found a faulty replacement, right? Sorry, we found it to be faulty. Then a replacement was sourced, but unfortunately, a staff member who keeps it open left the site and the contractor could not gain access, will return in the morning. So these are all of the things that we log all the time. Contractor called out, so it's yellow, we will fix it and it will go back to green. Then you go to, for instance, the one at the bottom, which is Paarl Hospital. Now you can imagine Paarl Hospital is one of those bigger critical places. And again, we have to have the replacement, do something, repairs in progress, awaiting spares. And at that point, we're now asking for a temporary temporary to be for Paarl to be exempted by Eskom while we get everything sorted at Paarl Hospital. So generator maintenance support, the actions taken to support that generator operation during load shedding. Firstly, the appointment of that second contractor now to support the maintenance of generator. One wasn't enough, so we have the 2. We also improved the quality of the oil used in the generators to ensure longevity and reduce friction and maintenance costs. We also did load curtailment at our facilities, so I'll come back to load curtailment. with installation of dropouts of non-critical loads, where overloading of the generator is problematic in case of smaller facilities, and for larger facilities, installation of this intelligent demand management system to manage the load automatically. So what we're saying here, because we have to run so often in the places that doesn't have load, that's not exempted from load shedding, on generator power, we also had to take the load off in those places. We have daily inspection sheets shared with facilities to ensure operational criteria adhered to by monitoring the oil and coolant levels and all of those. We have also diesel levels reporting on the maintenance portal. So that same portal that you saw, we can tell you what the diesel level is for each of those, so that we can have procurement support for diesel procurement. So we know at each of the now 193 what the usage is, where the levels are, and so we can predict what our ordering is for diesel and how that should be delivered. And then monitoring generators for underload operations, and it damages generators. We all add load to ensure longer life expectancy. So you also want to make sure that you keep it, that you don't put the generator at risk. So it's also titrating that you have enough use of a generator as opposed to overloading a generator. So backup power, this is the diesel expenditure and consumption, which this is where I told you about going up from 2 million in April to 4.9 million in May, 5.1 million in June, and 8 million in July. But although, and you can see the total liters that was purchased with this. So you can see the use has actually gone quite high up this. In July, we've drawn some journals because we previously put it against other projects. So we're also correcting. So July is a little bit skewed because of the journals that we've drawn to correct against the right place. Then managing energy consumption. So we have smart meters at 68 facilities. It's those large, the hospitals and the large PHC facilities. So of the 193 at 68, we have these smart meters. And these are really, really state-of-the-art stuff. We put it in as part of our energy reduction and green initiative in our department. So what we do is we monitor consumption against benchmarks and also international standards. And we plan our engineering interventions accordingly. And it also empowers facility managers, and it manages actually municipal tariffs as well, because we have a very accurate reflection of what we use in that, and we reconcile it back to what we have to pay with the municipality. So on the left-hand side, you see an example of from the 19th of June to the 22nd of June in Lentegeur, Ward 1, what the utilization was. So you can see what the standard use is. You can see the off-peak use. You can also see what was the previous period as comparison to this. And the previous period comparison is very important because previous year comparison, which is the blue ones, tells us whether from the comparative one, like say June 23, you compare it to June 22, you can see whether your utilization has dropped. And in this case, our baseline utilization has dropped quite significantly year on year. And so part of this is to also then put all the measures in place that you can, on the right-hand side, we can then track a group of hospitals. So the one on top is all our regional hospitals. We track it against these benchmarks. On the right bottom, you see the efficiency ranking. So if you are, there's an international benchmark. So typically it's energy consumption based on kilowatts per bed per day or year, or kilowatts per square meter per day or year. And this ranges from about 40 for a district hospital as a benchmark to about 80 for a central hospital, Grootscale Tygerberg, and everybody else in between. And what you see is if we are checking how well we're doing, the more you are into the green, the more you are below the benchmark. The more you are into the orange, the closer you are to the benchmark, and you start going to red, you're above the benchmark. So this is the way that we've been monitoring. And you can see on the right-hand side, for these facilities, all these regional hospitals, George, Paul, Worcester, Mowbray, all of them together in there, how we've been running efficiently below the benchmark, consistently green or dark green. So this picture is just a phenomenal picture of how we've been able to curtail and internationally benchmark that our utilization is as low as it can be compared to comparable benchmarks elsewhere in the world. Reducing the electricity demand. The facility is exempted by City of Cape Town and George municipalities. We are currently working on load curtailment plans because it's a one thing for them to be exempted in load shedding, but it's another thing that we continue to run very high utilization, and it doesn't help the load shedding schedules of the municipality. So we've got the exemption, but we've also undertaken with City and George that we will then try and keep that utilization as low as we possibly can. So we continue to reduce consumption, even though those hospitals are exempted from load shedding. So we go to hot water generation systems, the Central Sterilization Service Department, CSSD operating time, laundries, autoclaves. There's nothing that we leave unturned in terms of utilization to curb their expenditure, even though they are exempted from load shedding. And then further reducing electricity demand. So energy savings is incorporated into about 20 projects by replacing, where applicable, incandescent and fluorescent lights with LED. So that's one. We just go wall-mounted units for inverter drive split air conditioners, chillers and heating elements with heat pumps, roof insulation with higher efficiency insulation with improved heat flow resistance, color of roof cover to be painted white to improve thermal transfer and decrease the need for air conditioning. And you can see it goes on. So 20 of these projects are as a baseline across all our operations in the department to reduce electricity demand. Further, load curtailment plans drawn up by facilities are exempted from load shedding, as I said earlier. And then also the inverter sizing calculator tool for facilities as guideline to procure the size of the inverter and the batteries without the need of technical input. So what we mean by that, judging on the size, judging on what the utilization should be, we can now calculate what kind of inverter and battery you require without an expensive technical call out to say, come and measure, do all of that. We have a tool that now can say, this is the type and the size of the inverter or battery, and we can then move and speed up our procurement for our inverter program, which I will come to now. Our awareness campaign and energy huddles. So we save energy. It's a campaign, but we do save energy and we do water awareness at the same time. So we do energy and water and we run it concurrently, and we've been doing it for a long time. And it's also, if you look at what we say on the right-hand side, just to bring awareness amongst ourselves, that approximately 160 gigawatts is used by us in the past year. And, so that people are aware what it is that we're expressing it as comparatively in terms of this. The energy huddle is something that we brought out of COVID. This is a meeting 3 times a week. Our technical staff meets with our operational managers. It's problem-solving orientated, identify the risk, mitigate it, dashboard monitoring, check-in, and 3 times a week, quick check-in. And so we have on the pulse of everyone in the province, and everyone connects, so we know exactly at any given time. Dr. Andrelette Dutoit and her team knows exactly, and Dr. Wayne Smith, what the status is in every hospital in any specific time, day or night. Our inverter program at the rural clinics, so we're quite excited about it. So the phase 1 is we've got 51 clinics for a budget of 37 million, and that is for this financial year. The next financial year, we want to do an additional 87 clinics for a budget of 47. So you must remember, out of the 160 clinics that doesn't have generators, this is what we're doing. So we're starting with the ones that has no generator capacity, and we're starting with inverter program so that we can eventually have generators in the bigger ones, inverters in the smaller ones, and at least have some cover across all of them. So the progress on phase 1, 9 has been completed to date. Those 9 is Amaliesteen, Ieto, George Central and Slangrivier and Garden Route. In West Coast, it's Elandsbaai, Graafwater, Paternoster and Ribbekasteel. In Overberg, it is Genadendal. There's 42 that still need to be completed before the end of March. 27 is in load testing. 15 is to be initiated. So our clinics have been supplied with these inverters and lithium batteries, and you can see the pictures on the right-hand side, as example. So there's now a seamless essential power supply during load shedding. So it's automatic. So load shedding comes on, inverter kicks in, battery kicks in. There's no installation of photovoltaic panels yet due to safety and security concerns, because theft and vandalism, we first need safeguarding against that before we put the solar panels on these small facilities. Renewable energy program. We're planning the installation of a solar photovoltaic embedded generators at 15 hospitals. And that's for a combined total peak generation of about 5 megawatts. The installation is planned to be completed in 3 facilities by March 24, while the others will be completed in the following 2 years. Renewable energy produced will assist with the energy demand curtailment plan, and the renewable energy program will be expanded to all other health facilities as resources become available. And you can see the 15 hospitals that we've targeted. The 3 that's highlighted in bold is the ones that we want to have this system in place by end of March. It's Easter River as a pilot, Paarl as a pilot, and the Red Cross as a pilot. We'll learn a lot from those 3, and we'll roll it out to the others. And it's basically photosensitive panels located on the roofs. It combines via strings into inverters, which convert that DC then into single phase or 400 volts, 3-phase electricity to supply battery to various electrical equipment. And then batteries can be added to supply electricity via inverter in a hybrid system if we so choose. So if we choose to bring in the battery system, so it's like it's basically going directly from the panel into the electrical equipment. If we so choose, we can make it hybrid by adding batteries, but that's the idea of the system. The electrical supply preparedness plan. This is the electrical supply preparedness plan that we actually did in 2017, 2018 already. And it outlines the activities. We've updated it obviously now recently in 2022, but it is the activities that we will take to mitigate increasing stages of load shedding that goes beyond stage 6. So the plan outlines the step to be taken in what key clinical services should we maintain if we go beyond stage 6. What internal resilience, particularly as it pertains to essential supply of diesels, will be secure? What's the mitigation of risk as regards to external suppliers and role players? For example, pharmaceutical companies, the National Health Laboratory System and Western Cape Blood Transfusion. These were all affected by taxi violence in this last 7 days. So we always have a dependence on drugs being supplied and moved out, lab tests being done, the transfusion services being operational. So we obviously have to work with them for our whole system. Maintenance of essential equipment then becomes, essential communication becomes quite crucial because our command control capability is we will go to the Tygerberg Disaster Center as a senior management team. And we will have communication with every part of the system. And we need to constantly make sure if we go into this rare event of a blackout. As with COVID-19, this plan will be integrated with activities of private healthcare providers. We're working very closely, Dr. Smith, Dr. Karim, as well as our Provincial Disaster Management Center. So components of the plan are already active because we're already activating some of these things. And what is proven to be helpful is these working relationships that already exist between our department, Eskom, City of Cape Town, and all our various municipalities. Chairperson, that is a mouthful, but that is the end of the story. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation, Dr. Kuti. We really appreciate it. Minister Mbombo, is there anything that you'd like to add before I open up for questions?
Thank you. Dr. Kuti has covered everything, but of course, typical of me, it's also just to highlight, especially to the members there, that whilst the request for now is about presenting on the response on energy, and also the interest, the focus is on energy, please do understand that for us in health, always a step ahead. This is also forms part of the whole Western Cape climate change broader response strategy, I think 2050. So where we find that there are phases that we are busy with in regard to doing, like Dr. Klute has just mentioned, that actually the whole issue about the energy savings, specifically in terms of how to save electricity, started as far as 2017-18. Hence, there were also the exemptions for the 3 bigger hospitals. And also it's about how to ensure that our buildings don't consume electricity unnecessary. Our Chief Director, Dr. Angela Dutoit, could personally will even tell you that, in Dorp Street, how much we saved when we ended up switching off the lights. And also like now, where in the part of the strategy, you see in terms of actually how much we are saving in regard to doing what we do, specifically also in the, I think Dr. Cook did make a presentation, mention about our laundry and so forth. So, but the point is about, we do have a draft Western Cape Climate Change Response Strategy 2050. And then now, whilst we're talking about energy, which is the electricity as an emergency response, but going towards the global green and healthy hospitals, one cannot, even if there was no load sharing, we'll still be actually talking about the energy. So when the other sectors, they do this reactionary response and talking about fossils versus the renewable and all of those, in health, we are already a step ahead. The reason for that is about preparing for the issue around the climate change. Health generally is the sector that is a major contributor to climate change issues through not only to the waste and everything that is happening in the space, but it also, we take a responsibility that as a sector, since we are the major contributor to the aspects of the climate change negatively, then you take the responsibility. So the point I'm trying to share is about, this is one of the other things that we're doing. Water is part of it, where we end up having all the boreholes. The built environment is also part of it. So sometime probably when there's some time where you want to engage, we could even talk about the 2050 Western Cape climate change draft response and where we are right now. Thank you very much, but Dr. Smith is also here, can even add some other aspect. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before I take questions, Dr. Smith, is there anything that you wanted to add after the Minister wants to say anything?
Chair, nothing at this moment in time. If anything comes up in questions, I'm happy to answer that point in time. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, members, we will now move on to questions. I see members Marais, Van der Westhuizen and Pretorius. If I can ask that we, members Murray and Kasim as well. So we'll take those 5 hands for now. If I may ask that you limit your questions to 3 at the most. Thank you. Member Marais.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Kluti. Very informative and well written. Just 2 things. We couldn't follow the maps you gave us because, of course, we don't have color. We got black and white. Whereas you have the advantage of saying green means this, blue means this, and orange means this in a graph. But that's just by the way. The thing I wanted to ask, did you do a cost analysis for cost effectiveness? Because you got options. You can either have converters, you can have generators, you can have solar energy. How do you decide which of the 3 you want to use in terms of efficacy and cost effectiveness? And your boilers at the hospitals, how do you keep the boilers going? You need hot water, and that's a big consumer of electricity, boilers. Do you think the generators are more effective than solar energy, which is then diverted to the inverters and then to batteries and stored there? Or what do you think are the best methodology through your experience now? Because we're talking now, they could be used generators, you could have solar energy through inverters and storing it in batteries. What is more effective? Or what did you, from your experience, do a cost analysis?
Thank you, Member Marais. Member Van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, thank you very much for this presentation. I must say I'm impressed by the innovation, by so many of these steps taken. For example, minimizing the maximum demand is not only decreasing the municipal account to these facilities of ours, but it's also obviously assisting Eskom and therefore assisting our country as a whole by making electricity in these peak demand times available for use by other users. So thank you very much for that. My 3 questions are the following. The first one is, I presume that basic maintenance on some of these generators may be undertaken by the facility maintenance staff. Did you find the need to train any of these facility managers and maintenance staff on the maintenance, and can we call it elementary fault tracing on some of these generators and perhaps also some of the inverter systems? Then the third one, you said that there's a greater awareness among staff of the electricity usage by the different facilities. It seems to be then as if, I almost want to say, the account or the consumption is being communicated back to the staff. Is that communication also going down to, can I call it, the ground floor level, there where people are working, the people in the offices that in the past may have wanted to switch on a heater or consume electricity in other ways, perhaps by letting a tap run until the hot water comes through, etc. And then lastly, and this relates to the Honourable Marais question regarding the economics of this. I believe that providing uninterrupted power to staff plays a huge role to keep up staff productivity and to assist patients who would otherwise have to be turned away at great personal cost to them. But have you been able to quantify in any sense can I call it the savings by providing uninterrupted power supply versus when the staff had to do without electricity? In that respect, Chair, last Monday, I visited the municipal office where the generator failed to kick in. And it was notable that all the staff, I almost want to say they're down to tools. And they were standing around in the sun in little groups because they felt they couldn't continue with their work without electricity. Now, it seems to me as if this investment in UPS systems at least safeguard us to those losses. If Dr. Kloete could respond to this, I'll appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member van der Westhuizen. Member Pretorius.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
I just need to find out what time will the vehicle be delivered?
Sorry, there's somebody that's not on mute here. Thank you. Member Pretorius, you may continue.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon all again. Dr. Kloete, you mentioned about the possibility or that you're investigating a dedicated feeder for Khayelitsha and that you will get, you're awaiting a quote. May I ask, are there other hospitals being lined up for dedicated feeders? And then secondly, on that matter as well, who pays for the installation or the supply then of that dedicated feeder? And then I'm going to throw you a curved ball, Dr. Kloete, and I'm really not trying to be facetious. We had a briefing last week by Dr. Crisp on the NHI. Unless I missed something, I couldn't get absolute clarity on how provincial budgets will work under NHI. And this is the question. If we were to be under NHI, what would happen in cases like this when it comes to the electricity supply and inverters and generators? Who will pay for that? Do you have any clarity on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Pretorius. Member Murray?
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, it's something that's really been bothering me amid load shedding. And we've all heard the horror stories of people who resort to home care. Maybe they use something to assist them to breathe while they're sleeping, or a nebulizer, for example. And then there is load shedding, and these people unfortunately pass away. And I was just interested to know, amid load shedding, is there anything the department can do to assist in these cases? And if so, what sort of measures can be taken? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Murray. Member Kassim?
Thank you, Chairperson. Apologies, I got disconnected for a few seconds, so I'm not sure if my question has been asked, but I'll just ask it again. With regards to the inverter program within the rural areas, or specifically rural clinics, in phase 1, you have given an indication of the 9 clinics which has been completed. The remaining clinics that still needs to be completed, is there an indication or rather a document that can give us an idea where those 42 rural clinics are that are in the planning and costing stage? If there's any document or presentation with the beneficiaries of that specific program. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kassim. I don't think that question has been asked, so that's a very valid question. Thank you so much. Dr. Kluti, if you could answer those questions, you and your team, please.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you for the questions. I will answer some, and I'll ask some of the other colleagues to also assist. So let me start with Member Kassim's question. I'll go from the last to the first. The balance of phase 1, we have a clear list, Member Kassim, and Dr. Anzaleti Dutoya has the list. So if that needs to be made available to the committee, we can do so. Member Murray, if I understand your question correctly, it is the support for people that are dependent on electricity for home appliances that are suffering from load shedding. So we've had quite a few of those requests. Our only avenue has been to try and to link the individuals to nearby facilities where there is a supply of power. It is not the ideal, but we've tried at least to attempt to say, if you live close to this, if you have a problem, please use this, go there, go there. Obviously, we are by no means to supply home UPSs and home power supply for people during that. So it is a challenge, and it is people in the poorest of the poor situation that are compromised by having these supplies that is dependent on electricity. And it's also quite amazing what people have done to actually find solutions and help and support wherever they are. But we are aware of it, but we as much as we can, we take cognizance of the individual cases and try and support as much as we can. Member Pretorius' question, I'll start with the NHI question. Under the NHI, the recommendation, one of the fundamental points of establishing a national health insurance fund, the fund itself, one of the key recommendations is to change the legislation in such a way that the money that currently comes into provinces via provincial equitable share. So the current money comes in, it gets voted, it comes to us, we see it as vote 6, and then we get it from Treasury, and when we spend it accordingly. The flow of that money from the national fiscus, the idea is that money goes directly into the fund. It does not come to the provincial treasury. What we as a provincial department do, instead of getting our vote tabled in Parliament and getting an allocation, we apply to the fund and we get an annual allocation from the fund to run our operations in the province. So that is the intention, Member Pretorius. And obviously it will require a few things because it has required that in terms of PFMA and all of those, that money then is not voted to the province, it's extricated for health, put in the fund, and we then get our money from the fund for the operation that we are responsible for. The other questions you ask is the dedicated feeder we're currently planning. So Dr. Angelita Tutue and Dr. Wayne Smith, they are on a joint task team with our ESCOM head office here locally. Minister Mbombo and the senior management team, everybody on this call met with the ESCOM management about 2 months ago. And out of that, we got a dedicated task team, and the two of them serve from our side on the task team. So in then constant communication with ESCOM on interventions. We have prioritized Khayelitsha for a dedicated feeder. Who pays? We have to pay. It's because we're going to put it, we have to put it in. That's why we're waiting for a quote, and it's for our account. And with our financial pressures, it's an additional pressure on our financial pressure in terms of what was not budgeted for. If you take the diesel cost, if you take this, it's just for our cost. So at this point in time, that's the only one we're looking at, but we will take it facility by facility. Member van der Westhuizen's questions. I think the key question that you asked, Member van der Westhuizen, the basic maintenance, yes. We have had to implement a basic maintenance program, which basically says facility staff has to do a set of activities. So there's a standard operating procedure. Dr. Angelita Tutue and her team have basically said, look, this is what you need to do. You need to check this, you need to do that, you need to do that. And there's a standard training program for people to be able to do that. So we call it like what's called it basic level 1 maintenance, then there's level 2 maintenance, there's level 3 maintenance, but for the basic, there's training. And for each of the others, we have additional capacity in our system. In terms of greater staff awareness, yes, that consumption, and Dr. Angelita Tutue is very proud of that project. So I'm going to ask her just to explain to you, when we say that smart meters and that the information is given to people in this place, as you could see from that example, and sorry for that, Member Maria, you didn't see the colors, but the example I use, it's broken down to ward level. So it's not just for, this is Lenteghy Hospital. The smart meter tells you what this ward used, what that one used, what OPD used, what this one used. Because it's at that level of granularity, we can communicate to specific users. They say, actually, we're the team, this is what we use, and this is how we compare to ward X over there, ward that one, ward that one. But Dr. Angelita Tutue is very proud of that system, and she might want to just add 1 or 2 things to that. And therefore, the kind of frontline people understand, even the admin officers then would know this is what we use compared to that ward and that ward. And therefore, the targets is that you saw, which is very impressive, because we're in that very green or dark green, which means we are at the best efficiency compared to the benchmarks, is we've been able to draw that down into individual units and the awareness of people in a very decentralized way. And then the last one, the economics. I think that's a very interesting question that you're asking, sir. And it would be something that we need to do. If I understand the question correctly, you're saying, what is the cost for productivity for multiple interruptions? Because with the interruption comes a read, things are down, whatever, and people then become less productive. To give uninterrupted supply, what are we able to maintain in terms of productivity compared to the regular interruptions? So it's not just the cost of the electricity and that, but it's actually productivity in what we do. I think it's very interesting. We will definitely put that to our team in Dr. Angelita Tutue's unit. They're very creative, and it would be good to do a productivity analysis and a cost analysis of making the case for why uninterrupted supply is so good for efficient use of resources in terms of uninterrupted clinical services. But we already know that if we had uninterrupted clinical services for things that are quite expensive, like surgical services, we can use our resources much easier. With this interruption, we've had to cancel surgeries, we've had to do this, so we've actually wasted quite a lot of dead time, as you call it, because of the interruption. And it's good to show the counter. If uninterrupted, this is what you would have gained in terms of efficiency, and do that comparison. And then, Member Marais, I think the question that you ask is a very good question, and I'm going to ask Dr. Angelita Tutue just to explain it to you. But in short, we have looked at the options. So I forgot to say on the slide where we show you how much we spend on diesel. The issue there is supplying electricity via diesel for the same unit of electricity we generate by diesel, we're paying 4 times as much as we would have paid Eskom for that same energy. So you can imagine using diesel is a very, very inefficient way of supplying electricity. Now, the question you're asking is for what we're paying unit cost for Eskom, as opposed to what we would do if we use solar, all the others, look at the cost and say what is the best option. And therefore, how did we arrive at the solar panel with the inverter the inverter with battery to go onto solar panel and this photovoltaic system? Because as your question was, Minister Mbombo's question also comes in, it is more efficient green energy, but it's also for a different purpose. It's also looking at the contribution to the carbon footprint and to a greener economy. But I'll ask Minister Dr. Angeleti Dutue to specifically go into that. And just on the boilers that you asked, I did say in the slides that we've gone into providing heat pumps. And heat pumps has been a big cost saver, but I'll ask Dr. Angeleti Dutue also to do that. So, Laura, if you don't mind just reflecting on those 3 things. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, member. Thank you, HOD. So, what I want to start with is the cost of producing electricity with Eskom is at the moment around about 1.59 rand per kilowatt. And the cost, as we said, is the cost for generating electricity with diesel is 4 times more expensive. So we are quite, at 5 rand per kilowatt. On the solar one, we at the moment working on the 1 rand per kilowatt. So it's already quite dramatic. Of course, there is the issue about the capital investment. And maybe something that we need to explain, the ESCO contract, that is a contractor that has been, that is appointed, is actually working to improve our efficiency from the energy consumption point of view. And then the contract is not for us to pay the capital investment for this, for the 15 hospital that we were talking about, that they will have a roof with solar panel. We actually, the saving in electricity will be shared between us and the contractor. So for the department, there is no capital contribution for the 15 hospital that will have the solar panel photovoltaic equipment because it will be a long-term, is a 10-year contract of sharing the saving for electricity. For the inverters, we had to solve a problem because the rural clinic, as we mentioned, was not feasible, not affordable to put even small generator for the central power supply. In the view to increase our green or reduce our carbon footprint, as the minister mentioned, we thought that what will be safer or more efficient is to have these inverters with lithium battery, where one day when we can afford it and we will have maybe less issue related vandalism and theft, and we will install the solar panel. So there were not a lot of alternative for the rural clinics because they are in the dark when there is load shedding. So the possibility was to have all generators or to have this inverter. But as I said, the cost of the two, if you compare, thought to us, it's much more long-term solution to have because the generator are not a friendly, environmental friendly solution, and also very, very not affordable for us. So that is the issue. So we made some cost analysis, as I said, to what the technology, and the technology is interesting in the last few months, how is changing almost every day. So it's actually the technology of the inverter, the technology of the solar panel. So we are actually trying to go around and see how the technology is evolving in trying to solve this issue about load shedding. Then the issue related boilers. I just want to mention we have 3 boilers that are they are only they are going with the coal. One is at Tageberg, one is at Groteskia, one is at Lentechia. And what we are looking at, and again, this is a long-term kind of plan, for the decrease in carbon footprint is to use biomass instead to use the coal. So that is something that we already had some exposure from one of the service provider to see how instead to use coal, you using biomass in order to run the boilers, because unfortunately we cannot eliminate the big boilers because they are producing steam in hospital, and the steam is absolutely required for at least these three big facilities. Then the issue on the smart metering monitoring, yes, there is an app. Is actually you can download it, have it on the phone. That everybody can download it and see what is my hospital consumption, and is used for two purposes. One is, of course, for the manager to manage the demand and to see how can improve the efficiency, but also from the engineering team is used to see if there is any unique spike or something happening. We can immediately intervene before the electricity. There is too much electricity that is consumed. And then the dedicated feeder, yes, when and the team, the engineering team, they've been looking with ESCOM, and unfortunately, we look at every single hospital in our the 52 hospital that we have. But unfortunately, only Kalicha has got this potential to have a dedicated feeder. The other ones, unfortunately, are so embedded in the community that there is no way that ESCOM doesn't advise us to do anything on that. I think I will share, of course, the list of the clinics, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Angelita du Toit. Members, I will now take a second round of questions. I see Member Marais. I don't see anybody else. Member Marais.
Thank you so much for that explanation, both doctors. Yes, the last response was the one I was waiting for, the biomass option. It's obvious we will not be able to rely on ESCOM for a long time into 2026 perhaps, and even longer. We have a growing population, more patients. Western Cape now has 7.2 million people, and in 94 we only had 4.1 million people. So the needs and consumption will increase. Now, biomass, is this something that the department would recommend our energy should be made more dependent upon biomass energy, especially if we look at what they wanted to do at Athlone, to restart those tunnels or whatever they're going to do there? Do you think that seeing we are going to be in this situation for another 2 or 3 years, that's enough time for a report that will give guidance for the next 5 years after 2024? Guidance as to what should be, what we can do, especially now that we've heard that if the NHS is accepted and made a law, then our equity share of the budget will not come directly to us, but it will come, the conditional grants and all that, the money will come via another body, the NHS. And we would have lost a lot of things if that happens. Even our budgets could be affected. So I know it's a bit of a curveball, but does any of the doctors want to venture an opinion on whether we shouldn't, at the same time, with all your experience you've now accumulated over the past 3 years of ESCOM's debacle, come up with a report to advise this committee and the Premier as to the advantages of solar or biomass? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Member van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the responses, Dr. Klute. Again, I can only reiterate, I'm so impressed by all the innovation and the cost savings, which, as I've said, is not only to the advantage of the Department of Health in the Western Cape, but also to the broader community. So thank you very much for that. My next two questions deal with security. The first one is that we've learned from others that quite often during load shedding, they experienced increased levels of vandalism, theft, etc. Perhaps if you could just tell us, your experience in this regard. And the second one linked to that is in terms of security systems, lights, but particularly alarm systems. My experience has been that many of these alarm systems, just like the standby generators, were never designed to run for extended periods as standby systems, and that the batteries of these alarm systems do not have enough time to recharge because they're supposed to be trickle charged, and therefore, if you have 6 hours and more of load shedding per day, that many of these batteries become depleted, that the lifespan of these batteries are also, negatively affected, etc. What has been your experience in this regard with alarm systems, etc., at clinics? And have you found a way to overcome the limitations during these extended or high levels of load shedding? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member van der Westhuizen. Dr. Klute?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, Member van der Westhuizen and Member Maree. I'll start with Member van der Westhuizen's questions. Yes, on the security systems, we definitely picked up exactly as you say, sir. And Dr. Angeletta Twe and the team has done something to replace all the batteries, and she can explain technically what they've done. But that problem has definitely surfaced, and there's definitely been a response from our side. In terms of security incidents and vandalism and theft, I'm going to maybe ask Dr. Smith just to also reflect on that, because a lot of that has to be also reported into our system and what our experience has been. But between Dr. Angeletta Twe and Dr. Smith can maybe reflect on the vandalism and theft. And then Member Maree, the question about biomass, its utility. And what I understood you to ask is a technical report of its use and the benefits for us, and potentially a technical report of expanding its use for other uses. Again, Dr. Angeletta Twe is the engineer amongst us, and she's probably best suited to answer that. So Laura, if you can answer some of it, and if need be, then we can go to Wayne. Laura?
Thank you very much. Okay, so the security issue. Yes, what happened is the batteries are not capable to charge. So what we did, we built up some redundancy. So we specified some call as ball inverter, something like an household inverter that can be connected to the alarm system. So EMS facilities, some forensic facilities, some even clinics, when they have the alarm, they have the battery, but they are supported only for this specific alarm and an additional redundancy via the inverter. So that is not expensive, and that is what we did for that. In relation to the biomass option, we, as I said, we are looking at all the possible alternative renewable. So we're looking at wind, we look at the solar farms, we look at the biomass option, and this is a work that we would like to see if we can convert the big boilers that I mentioned. So it's something that we are not only looking at solar. We are looking to all the renewable energies, and including the wind. And we will like it, to try to experiment in piloting. If you remember, when we built Kalicha Hospital, there was a solar panel in 2012, and there is a small wind, but didn't last too long. Unfortunately, that was broken quite soon. But that is something that we are looking at, all the alternative renewable energy. Thanks.
Sorry, Doc, you're on mute.
Sorry, Chairperson. Wayne, on the vandalism and theft?
Yeah, thank you, HOD. And yeah, to confirm, it is becoming an increasing problem, particularly the period just after load shedding. So we try, expecting to go back online and the power coming back, and then nothing happens. And what is happening during that time is the criminal element is aware of the load shedding, so they go on and they try and pull up the copper cables and stuff. So how we mitigate that as much as we possibly can is we have access to our own mobile generators, which we try and run out and put into the system to at least keep the core and emergency systems running until we can get the repair done. But again, huge kudos to both the city and Eskom. Once that happens, we immediately activate and they make it a priority to try and assist us and to do the repairs as quickly as possible. One of the exciting developments is, in fact, that they're looking at replacing the copper with aluminium. And that's making it less attractive to the criminal element. So that's ongoing work that both Eskom and the city are doing. But yeah, we're reliant on quick repairs, and both Eskom and the city and municipalities have been in that space and helping us incredibly quickly to get things back up to run. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. Members, I don't see any further hands on the chat or on the participants list. Yes, Member Pretorius.
Sorry for doing this, Chair, but thanks. This is the last time. Chair, on the last slide, which addresses the electricity supply preparedness plan, I don't know, I had some interference and maybe I missed something. Can I just get clarity on the facilities that are exempt? If they were to go beyond stage 6, or if we were to go beyond stage 6, are they equipped with inverters, batteries, whatever facilities, generators? That's all I need to ask. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much. And then Member Dugmore.
Chair, no, thank you. No, Chair, I just wanted to, I think as others have done, thank the department for the presentation and the work that's been done. It's very informative, and the health department is clearly, also learning and innovating in the process. So there weren't any particular questions that I had, but I just wanted to express that. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure it's deeply appreciated. Dr. Clitty, one more time.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and thank you to Member Dugmore for that feedback, and all the other members for the very positive feedback. So yes, Member Pretorius, when we go beyond stage 6, no exemption to any hospital. And if you go beyond stage 6, goes to 7, goes to 8, you potentially very quickly go to a blackout situation because of the instability of the grid. And what we have in this plan, which is a very detailed plan, is what is our contingencies to kick in to do that. But just to mention, the hospitals that are exempted have probably some of our biggest generator capacity, because you can still have an unforeseen power outage, not a load shedding, and unforeseen power outages has happened at these places. And for instance, Tygerberg Hospital, our biggest hospital, has probably the most sophisticated generator capacity. If I'm going to ask Dr. Angela to do it just once, maybe just on that one, to explain how sophisticated that generator capacity is. And even in a blackout situation, because we are choosing Tygerberg as the place because of the disaster center where we will need some generation capacity to be able to continue to run our operations. Dr. Angelita Tutwe?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, the Tygerberg, we did an upgrading over the last 5 years of the middle voltage feeding to the hospital, the substation from the city of Cape Town, and then all the ring reticulation that we have around the facility. We have 2 rings that create some redundancy. So we have generators that are located on one side of the hospital and other side of the hospital that can provide electricity to the entire hospital, each of them. So actually, there is a double redundancy. So in case there is a problem with one generator, there is still capacity to provide electricity. So there are generators that are big as like a house, but that is something that will prevent the hospital to have a problem if one generator fails, because the capacity is actually is taken that the rest of the generator can assist. And is more than one generator, and it is provided, as I mentioned, is only electrical essential power supply, like we said. So we will be able to, of course, not very nice to have it, but in case of stage 7. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, members, for your questions. This is indeed a very important and essential briefing that we received from the department, and we are deeply appreciative of the content of it. Minister Mbombo, is there anything you'd like to add as a closing?
Thank you, Chair, and the members for the invite, and thank you for the department for presenting comprehensive feedback as always. But just to remind the members that sometimes when we do this presentation, it's about how you can be able also to mobilize resources on our behalf, because there is no new money in regard to the issues related to response to the load shedding, as it was even during the time of the day zero for the water, when we have to install the boreholes. So with the budget cuts that have happened this year, and there's still more within the MTF, it means that we'll have to roll Paul and pay Pauline. So it's the money that is meant for the services, because there's not much coming from the infrastructure budget, grant, that now we have to use in order to do what we do. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbombo, Minister Mbombo, sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Kluti and your team, and to the Minister. You are excused now. You are free to go as we just conclude with some committee business. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend. Members, if you might stay behind as we just have a few resolutions and actions to take care of. Right. I see it's mostly just us here. Members, are there any resolutions and actions that would have to emanate from that report that you'd like to raise?
Yes, Speaker.
I'm not the speaker, but go ahead.
Well, you just spoke, you see. Okay. Chairperson, if I may, I think that we cannot fail to express our gratitude and our full confidence in the competency and what we've just heard of this department and the 2 doctors who gave a briefing. So we must have something relating to our committee's satisfaction with the department's comprehensive report, the state of readiness the health department is in to deliver still good service delivery and compensate for the energy shortages caused by load shedding. That could be in a resolution, and that we further encouraged by the efforts to look futuristically at biomass and solar energy methods of supply to create our own energy grid in the Western Cape for any future emergency. Something in that respect. I think we're going to look futuristically. We might have more emergencies waiting us, depending on coal supply and quality of coal. And if they can now already give us an option that we're in a state of readiness in terms of biomass usage, where our boilers, water, energy, solar energy, which we can feed through inverters and stored in batteries in case there's another emergency situation. We've got to put this in. There's people that's far more conversant with the English language than me. they can formulate this into a very comprehensive resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Marie, and I'll ensure that that resolution gets included in our report. Our thanks to the department. Member van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, I would first like us to record the serious effect that load shedding has on our health facilities. You know, the risks that that come with the fact that, you know, operations and so on may need to be interrupted, etc., or that people may have to finish operations in the dark and so on, and that quite a vast array of medical equipment depends on electricity supply and the continuous electricity supply nowadays. Secondly, that the costs, not only in terms of risks, but also the financial costs for our health system be noted, and that we, you know, express our concerns in this regard, that, you know, the budgets for the various state departments, but particularly for health, we continuous electricity supply is so important, that those costs, and we've also seen the cost of diesel, for example, that unfortunately this comes at the expense of other services that we would have been able to roll out to patients and other clients. And then thirdly, Chair, I would like to propose that we also recognize and acknowledge the innovation by the Department of Health, particularly in creating awareness of electricity consumption, and because I think that is a huge thing. If I may say, you know, quite often people believe, you know, somebody will pay for the electricity, and here it seems to me as if from the responses we received, as if staff in hospitals, etc., are really being made aware that electricity is a scarce commodity, and that it is possible to save on the consumption thereof. And then lastly, Chair, the demand management systems that apparently have been installed in a number of our health facilities, that we commend them for that technological, can I call it solutions, technological advancements that they have made, and that, you know, that in itself is also assisting us as a province when it comes to peak demand for electricity. Thank you.
Thank you, Member van der Westhuizen. Are there any further resolutions or actions, members? No. In that case, I would just like to... Member Pretorius.
I'm sorry that I'm late, Chair. Chair, I think I want to refer to the fact mentioned by the Minister in terms of budget, and that I don't know whether this is fair and whether it's possible, but that consideration be given by the Minister of Finance, that health facilities not receive less money, or during the MTF that what is coming their way or supposed to be coming their way is further reduced. I don't know whether that is a recommendation, but, you know, I'm just thinking, if, say for instance, what happened in Hawaii, I'm sure most of you followed that, what happened with those fires in Hawaii happened, or for that matter in Southern Europe, happens to us overnight in the city, and with that goes massive electricity faults and what have you. Then the hospitals have to be prepared, not only private hospitals, but most certainly provincial and national hospitals. I hope that can be worded into something. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Pretorius. Member Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, maybe if we can structure it in a way of looking at engaging with the National Treasury to look at the equitable share, to ask them if they do consider increasing the allocation based on the energy crisis that we are facing presently, more on the health, because that it has to be prioritized, looking at the life that can be lost within the health facilities.
Thank you, Member Maseko. What we can do is, because we are privileged to have the chair of budget in our ad hoc committee as well, I'm sure she's been listening to the money aspect of this this discussion and debate. What we can do is I can ask her how best to tackle this resolution or recommendation. And I see her hand is up, Member Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. If I may assist, the Provincial Treasury, to my knowledge, is in the process of the MTEC at the moment, in order to come up with the adjustment budget for the end of the year, as is done every year. So perhaps the wording could read something like that consideration is given in the MTEC negotiations, particularly with the Department of Health, to ensure that sufficient budget is put towards this particular function and or line items. I do know that the departments have to go into negotiation with Provincial Treasury. Every department has to come up with their respective business plans. And because our equitable share is decreasing year on year on year, it becomes a much more difficult struggle to decide which budgets get cut, which budgets remain, and which budgets money needs to be added to. As I do think that every person in every committee, in every department and every topic would probably argue that their budget should get more money. So this, in this particular way, it would give Provincial Treasury the opportunity to consider the respective business plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Bartman. Members, are there any further resolutions or actions? No? In that case, I would just like to remind members that our next meeting will take place on Wednesday, the 16th of August, and we will be engaging with the municipalities from the Cape Winelands District Municipality. So we'll see you then. Ma'am Kuti, have I covered everything in the agenda? Is there anything else that I've missed, Ms. Kuti?
Afternoon, Chairperson, that will be covered. Thank you.
Good. Well, in that case, members, I would like to thank you very much for your attendance and for your participation in this meeting. It's deeply appreciated, and I think we can all say that we've been quite enlightened by the presentation and the questions and answer session. I wish you well over the weekend. I hope that some of it will be time spent with your families, a bit of recuperation, and then we start all again on Wednesday the 16th. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Bye-bye, members.
Thank you, Chair.